There's a particular kind of loneliness that exists even in crowded rooms. You watch others laugh, share stories, lean into conversations with ease, and you wonder what invisible thread connects them that somehow missed you. You're physically present, but emotionally elsewhere, observing intimacy, like someone watching a film through soundproof glass. You can see the shapes of connection, but you cannot quite touch them. Perhaps you've felt this, the strange distance that settles between you and others, not from hatred or indifference, but from something quieter, a hesitation that lives in your chest, a guard that rises without permission. You want closeness, yet when it approaches, something inside you retreats. If this perspective resonates, you can support the video by liking it. People who struggle with deep connection are not cold, they are not broken. They are often the most sensitive souls in any room, carrying an awareness so sharp it cuts both ways. They feel too much, which is why they've learned to feel from a distance. Because somewhere in their past, feeling fully meant hurting fully. Attachment theory offers insight here. Psychologist John Bowlby discovered that early relationships shape the blueprints for all future bonds. When a child experiences inconsistent love, when affection arrives and vanishes without pattern, the nervous system learns to brace for abandonment. Safety becomes uncertain. So the child adapts by expecting less, by building walls that feel like wisdom but are really just old defenses. Years pass. That child becomes an adult who intellectualizes emotion, who analyzes conversations instead of experiencing them, who keeps people at arm's length while secretly aching to be held. They've mistaken protection for personality. They've confused isolation with independence, and they cannot name the moment it all began. Only that connection now feels dangerous in ways they cannot articulate. Notice how they move through relationships. They give just enough to seem involved, but withhold just enough to stay safe. They share stories, but rarely vulnerabilities. They ask questions, but deflect when questions return. Comment guarded if this describes your experience. It's a careful dance, this performance of intimacy without the risk of being truly seen. Neuroscience reveals something profound about this pattern. The brain's social engagement system, governed partly by the vagus nerve, can become dysregulated through prolonged stress or emotional neglect. When this happens, the body literally struggles to feel safe in connection. Even kind gestures trigger hypervigilance. Even gentle words are scanned for hidden meanings. The nervous system, trained by past pain, cannot distinguish between genuine warmth and potential threats. This creates a cruel paradox. The very thing they crave, deep human connection, activates the same alarm system designed to protect them from it. So they remain close enough to avoid loneliness, but distant enough to prevent heartbreak. They live in the hallway between intimacy and isolation, belonging fully to neither. Some develop what psychologists call intellectualization as a defense mechanism. They transform feelings into concepts, turn vulnerability into analysis. When emotion rises, they step back and observe it clinically, as though watching someone else's experience. This creates the illusion of control, but it also creates distance from their own inner world. They become strangers to themselves, which makes being known by others nearly impossible. Others adopt a different strategy, what researchers term preemptive rejection. They pull away before others can. They find flaws in perfectly good people. They sabotage budding closeness with sudden coldness or manufactured distance, not because they want to, but because their subconscious believes that all connection eventually ends in abandonment. Better to control the timing of loss than to be blindsided by it again. Type YES if this helped you understand something about yourself. There's often a triggering event buried in their history. Perhaps a parent who was physically present but emotionally absent. Perhaps a betrayal that arrived from someone trusted. Perhaps a moment when they needed comfort and found only silence. These experiences carve grooves in the psyche, teaching the heart that needing others equals suffering. What makes this particularly painful is that, from the outside, they often appear fine. They function well in professional settings. They maintain cordial friendships. They might even be in relationships. But there's a quality missing, a depth withheld. Partners sense it, that invisible ceiling beyond which they cannot pass. Friends feel it, the subtle withdrawal beneath the pleasantries. And the person themselves feels it most acutely. The awareness that they are performing connection rather than experiencing it. Research on emotional avoidance shows that suppressing feelings doesn't eliminate them. It simply redirects their energy. Unfelt emotions become physical tension, chronic fatigue, unexplained anxiety. The body keeps score of everything the mind refuses to process. So they ache in ways that have no medical explanation, carrying grief in their shoulders, loneliness in their chest, longing in their stomach. There's also a cognitive component. People who struggle with connection often hold what psychologists call core beliefs about relationships. Beliefs formed so early they feel like truth rather than interpretation. Beliefs like closeness always leads to pain, or I am too much for others to handle, or if they really knew me, they would leave. These beliefs operate beneath conscious awareness, quietly sabotaging every attempt at intimacy. If someone you know might benefit from this, feel free to share it. The tragedy is that these individuals often possess remarkable capacity for depth. They understand nuance. They perceive emotional subtleties others miss. They would make extraordinary friends, partners, confidants, if only they could let themselves be known. But fear has convinced them that visibility equals vulnerability, and vulnerability equals annihilation. Some find temporary relief in surface-level connections, relationships that demand little emotional investment. They surround themselves with acquaintances, keeping calendars full while hearts remain empty. The activity creates the illusion of connection without the risk of intimacy. But eventually, the emptiness returns, sharper than before. Because companionship without depth only highlights what's missing. Breaking this pattern requires something terrifying. It requires feeling the very thing they've spent years avoiding. It requires sitting with discomfort, with vulnerability, with the possibility that opening up might lead to rejection. There's no shortcut through this. Healing demands descent into the places they've learned to abandon. Therapy, particularly approaches focused on attachment repair, can offer a safe container for this work. A skilled therapist becomes a kind of reparative relationship, offering consistency where there was chaos, attunement where there was neglect. Slowly, the nervous system learns that connection can exist without catastrophe. If this gave you clarity, comment seen below. Small practices help too. Naming emotions instead of analyzing them. Staying present when discomfort arises in conversation. Choosing vulnerability in measured doses. Testing whether the feared outcomes actually materialize. Each small risk rewires the brain's expectation of what connection brings. But perhaps the deepest truth is this. The struggle to connect is not evidence of deficiency. It's evidence of a heart that once loved deeply enough to be devastated by its loss. These individuals are not incapable of connection. They are deeply, painfully capable. That's why they protect themselves so carefully. They know exactly what's at stake. So if you recognize yourself in these words, know that your caution makes sense. Your walls were built for good reason, but walls that once protected you can eventually imprison you. The question is not whether you can connect. You already know you can. The question is whether you're ready to let yourself try again, knowing the risk, choosing it anyway. Because the alternative, this careful distance, this performance of presence while remaining fundamentally alone, might be the greater danger after all. If this exploration offered you insight, take a moment to like the video, and before you go, consider this. What would it feel like to be fully known by someone, without the mask, without the performance? That feeling you just experienced, that's your answer about whether connection still matters to you. If these reflections on human psychology resonate with how you see the world, subscribe to The Watching Self for more journeys into the hidden landscapes of the mind.